Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, the AI hardware market is being utterly disrupted. Grok has landed a massive $20 billion licensing deal with NVIDIA. It really signals the beginning of the end for GPU dominance and inference. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley's talent war is reaching all the way to Washington, and we're going to analyze why the robot dance has officially become, well, a historical artifact. Okay, let's unpack this. We have a massive stack of source material from the trending X-Newswire today. It's covering these huge macro shifts in tech, finance, and culture. Our mission is to guide you through the critical insights you need to understand these immediate market vibrations to really make sense of the high-stakes decisions being made right now.
And we're here to give you the context, not just the headlines, but the second-order effects. We're tracking who's capitalizing on this shift, and maybe more importantly, who is having to pay $20 billion just to hedge against being left behind.
That sets the stage perfectly. Yeah. Let's jump straight into the hardest news of the day. And it has to be this, what can only be called a tectonic shift in the AI chip space, the Grok deal. So At The Disencapitalist shared a clip of Grok's founder, Jonathan Ross, explaining their core advantage. For years, the story has just been NVIDIA, NVIDIA, NVIDIA. But Ross highlights a critical separation in the AI pipeline. Training versus inference.
And this is the nuance the market is now absolutely fixated on. Training these big models requires just massive generalized compute power. It's the brute force where NVIDIA's GPUs are king. But Ross's company, Grok, developed something different, an LPU, or language processing unit. And what's really crucial here is understanding why this LPU matters for inference.
Right, so inference is when a user actually asks the model a question.
Exactly.
So what makes the LPU a threat to the GPU when you're actually deploying a model?
It all comes down to latency and data flow. The LPU architecture, it's optimized to get rid of memory bottlenecks. It's like an internal waiting game that slows GPUs down when they run these large language models. Inference is sequential. It demands the lowest possible latency and just a really consistent, rapid data flow. Speed and cost per query are everything.
And the context Ross shared showed they can deliver AI results faster and far more energy efficiently than the current GPU stacks. Which brings us to the market's response. NVIDIA, the undisputed champ, moved incredibly fast to mitigate this threat. They announced a non-exclusive licensing deal with Grok, valued at around $20 billion.
Wait, $20 billion for a non-exclusive license?
Yep.
That number alone tells you everything. It tells you everything about NVIDIA's level of concern. It sounds less like a strategic investment and more like an existential insurance policy.
An insurance policy, I like that.
Yeah, NVIDIA realizes they were going to hemorrhage market share in that high-volume, lower-margin inference sector. This deal lets them inject that specialized tech into their own stack without, spending 5 years and billions trying to reinvent the wheel.
So that's the core insight. The market is finally prioritizing specialized efficiency over just raw, generalized power. And we saw the ripple effects immediately, right? In the supply chain, investor enthusiasm for partners like GlobalFoundries, ticker GFS.
Absolutely. When a giant makes a $20 billion defensive move, the whole supply chain feels it. It validates the LPU concept. It signals that capital is about to shift and shift rapidly.
This whole shift toward high-stakes, specialized tech brings us perfectly to the human side of it, the human capital, the risk tolerance you need to build these companies. At the start, Archive posted some really interesting insight from Peter Thiel about Elon Musk's success.
And Thiel pins it squarely on one thing: exceptional risk tolerance. Specifically, a tolerance for being publicly wrong. The context was that back in the early 2000s, people genuinely thought Musk was, really, really crazy.
Yeah, I remember that. There was even a scrapped book chapter that was going to call him the man who knew nothing about risk.
Exactly. It just perfectly captures that tension. If you want a high reward, you have to take these huge, often career-threatening risks.
But when those risks pay off, they're called visionary. But the reaction to that post, they brought up the critique, right? The safety net. Did government bailouts or public funding ultimately enable these ventures, letting the risk takers fail without facing the full cost?
It's that constant debate, isn't it? And the irony is, now the government desperately needs that exact kind of talent. Bloomberg, at Business, reported on Scott Cooper's U.S. Tech Force plan. He's trying to lure high-skilled AI workers into federal government for 2-year stints.
The government is finally admitting its old value proposition, lifetime employment, has zero appeal for a 25-year-old AI engineer. So Cooper is trying to reframe it as short-term civic impact. But, come on. Can that really compete with the promise of generational wealth?
That is the fundamental problem. The skepticism in the replies was immediate. It just highlights this massive, massive compensation gap. You're asking someone who could pull, what, 7 figures in equity and salary from a startup to trade that for a fraction of the pay.
You can compete on meaning, sure, but can you compete with $5 million in stock options?
Not effectively, no. This is a talent drain that the government is trying to solve with patriotism when the private sector is solving it with, as you said, generational wealth. The incentives just don't line up.
And that focus on money brings us to investment strategy. We saw a commentary from Henry Kravis about VCs trying to copy the private equity roll-up strategy using AI. At Boring Biz shared his core observation. Multiple arbitrage is closing.
Okay, so for listeners who don't live in spreadsheets, multiple arbitrage is basically buying small companies at a low valuation, say 6 times revenue.
Right.
And then you consolidate them into a bigger company that can demand a much higher multiple, maybe 15 times. You just profit from that difference.
So Kravis is saying you can't sneak into the farmer's market anymore and buy the vendor's goods at rock-bottom prices.
That's a perfect analogy.
The vendors know the futures price on their squash now.
Exactly. These small AI companies are waking up, as he put it. They're refusing to sell for 6x when they see their peers getting 15x. Information is just too available now. It makes that whole strategy much harder.
And the cultural context around that post was pretty funny. All the jokes about investment bankers being back at their desks at 8:01 a.m. the day after Christmas.
It just reinforces that this is a world that demands constant high-level expertise. And that's exactly why the talent we were just talking about is so incredibly expensive.
So we've looked at the big strategic challenges. But all this relies on one thing: actual users. Let's see who's winning the engagement war. According to the latest similar web data shared by @CBDoge, Grok is now the #1 AI tool in the world by average visit duration.
This is a huge signal for XAI. Grok is at 7 minutes and 44 seconds. That's well above ChatGPT at 6.32 and Gemini at 6.59. This isn't just a flash in the pan. This has been sustained for 2 months.
Okay, I agree retention is a huge deal. But let me push back a bit. Given that the Grok viral boost often comes from a very specific, crypto and meme enthusiast bubble, couldn't this duration metric be a little inflated by power users who are spending like half an hour in some niche channel? Does it really reflect broad utility?
That's a fair challenge, but I think the sheer margin of the lead suggests something more fundamental. A lot of ChatGPT usage is transactional. You ask a question, you get an answer, you leave. Grok's longer duration implies a deeper engagement, maybe more conversational tasks, more iteration, or maybe it's just more entertaining. Either way, they have a sticky product, and that is gold in the platform wars.
Meanwhile, the giants are making their countermove at the most fundamental level, the browser itself. Google has released an experimental AI-powered browser called Disco using Gemini 3's GenTabs feature. At Code by Poonam highlighted this.
And GenTabs is pretty compelling. It moves beyond AI just summarizing a page and toward AI actually structuring your interaction with the page. It turns your open tabs into custom apps instantly.
The demo video was wild. It showed taking a bunch of tabs open on different bunk beds and just boom, turning them into a product comparison tool. Or turning a collection of holiday pictures into a memory match game for your kids right there in the browser.
It's that seamless web-to-app transition. Instead of navigating pages, the AI just aggregates the info and builds the tool you need on the fly. Access is waitlist only for now, but the goal is clear. Make the browser the OS for your AI.
Moving from the digital to the physical world, let's talk robotics and the push for speed. At Iliaraliu posted about Novarc Technologies' Spool welding robot. And the numbers are dramatic. We're talking about TIG equivalent quality at 4 pounds per hour deposition rates.
Which is double the manual rate. That's a 300% faster welding speed. For repetitive tasks, that's a productivity boost of, 20 to 50%? That's real economic advantage.
But what about the usual critique we hear? The limitations of physical automation. Does it handle the real world?
That is the necessary critique, and the replies pointed it out. Robots still really struggle with variable fitments, custom angles, things that are unpredictable on site. This robot excels at spool welding, which is standardized, but the trend is still undeniable.
Tying that engineering progress to culture. Kipano pointed out something fantastic. He said we're now at a stage where the robot dance is basically historical preservation.
This is where tech becomes self-aware. The video shows this advanced humanoid robot. It's clad in streetwear, and it's doing that very deliberate, angular, mechanical parody of a machine.
The 1970s human dance move.
Exactly.
So it's the emulator, emulating past human emulation. We used to imitate the jerky movements of early robots. Now, The superfluid machines are imitating our jerky interpretation of their ancestors.
It connects right back to that whole cycle we saw with Pinky Doll's NPC streaming or J.D. Beck's quantized drumming. When a technology starts making self-referential jokes about its own history, it means it's fully integrated into the culture. It's moved beyond novelty.
The robot dance is now meta.
Totally meta.
That's a great insight. Now let's get into a detail that affects millions of users every day. UX design philosophy. At Soren Blank started a great debate on instant success states versus artificial loading delays. He argues that if a request takes less than 100 milliseconds, just show the success state. No spinners.
And the theory absolutely supports him. There's a concept called the Doherty threshold. Basically, any system response over about 400 milliseconds breaks the user's focus. So instant feedback is key.
But the debate in the thread revealed this fascinating psychological conflict. Users have been trained by years of slow software to expect a delay.
Precisely. If a complex task finishes too quickly, some users actually get suspicious. They think an error occurred or the task didn't really run. It's a conflict between raw efficiency and perceived reliability.
So the UX challenge isn't just about being fast.
No, it's about conveying both speed and reliability at the same time without using those old, archaic spinners.
From product psychology to education. Anthestimation is promoting Replicube, a puzzle game on Steam that teaches math and coding. The idea is you write code with math functions to replicate these 3D shapes.
This taps right into how effective gamification can be. The post cited research showing these tools can improve coding comprehension by 25 to 40% over lectures.
The mechanism is what's so compelling, is immediate visual feedback. You write a function, you see the shape. If it's wrong, the shape is visibly wrong. It makes an abstract concept totally intuitive.
Right. It externalizes the internal logic of the code. It makes errors, concrete things you can see and fix. It's a huge step forward for democratizing these skills.
Finally, let's wrap up with the holiday tech cluster. We saw AI and autonomy all over Christmas marketing. Tesla, via at Sawyer Merritt, was running ads for FSD supervised, framing it as the best chauffeur imaginable.
The emphasis on supervise is important there. They're making it clear the driver is still responsible. The pitch is shifting away from novelty and more towards pragmatic safety and convenience, citing those NHTSA stats on collision reduction.
But they balanced that serious pitch with some whimsy. The Sandemo 2.0 update from at Tesla swapped the car and the navigation for a sleigh and even had a Santa Optimus robot. And Grok got in on it too, right?
Oh, yeah. Grok introduced an Add Santa template for their Imagine AI tool. It's AI leaning hard into entertainment. But the user feedback on the Tesla feature was really telling. Some parents, and their kids, were actually disappointed by the robotic elements. They wanted the traditional Santa, not a robot Santa.
Ah, the classic clash. Innovation meets a cultural icon. Do you make Santa magical, or do you update him into a humanoid robot?
Tesla chose innovation, but they might have sacrificed the magic. It just shows that even in fun consumer tech, deep cultural expectations really matter.
So we've covered the massive strategic shift in AI hardware with that $20 billion Grok NVIDIA deal, the accelerating talent war, and the pretty detailed cultural implications of robotics, from welding to the robot dance.
If you connect all those threads, the licensing deal, Grok's user retention, the closing of VC arbitrage, the message is pretty unambiguous. Given the clear market signal from that NVIDIA deal and the rise of specialized architectures like the LPU, our prediction for the next quarter is that specialized inference hardware. Hardware focused purely on speed, cost, and energy. That's going to become the primary focus for venture capital and M&A in the AI chip space. The era of generalized compute dominating inference is ending. We're about to see a fresh wave of consolidation as this specialized tech proves its worth.
We appreciate you joining us for this deep dive into the market vibrations. We'll catch you next time on the Daily Vibecasting.